but the sun planet is intensely so hot you couldn't survive there for more than a nanosecond. So some difference also. So exploitation and dedication, they have in a way a similarity. One is dedicated to enjoying their senses, gratifying their own senses, or the senses of their extended self, which means their family, their society, their nation, And then the other dedication is dedicated to satisfying the senses of Krishna. Hari, Guru, Vaishnav, like that. So in that way, because there's activity, there's a functional activity, utilizing of the energy, the soul's energy, in either case. So there is that similarity. But in the middle, it's complete dead stop, full stop. Is a complete cessation of material existence, but there's no emergence of spiritual activity. So that's why the Jnanis, they like to say the knower and the knowledge and the object of knowledge, which is God, they all merge into one point at that point. Bing, like that, disappear. But if you say these three things are coming there and they're merging in a point, well, why do you stop there? If you continue on, it's going out like that, isn't it? So it's like in a camera, you have the what they call the focal point. So the image is inverted, all right? And then it's coming to the focal point, and when it's coming out, it's coming in the right way that we're seeing on the screen. Or at least in the old cameras anyway. Don't know about digital technology. Hare Krishna. Yeah, so this is the perverted reflection on this side. And the other side is the original. And in the middle, there's a point, crossover point of, seems to be nothing, tatashta, seems to be. So that's what these spiritual, general class of so-called spiritualists, transcendentalists, go for that. Yeah. So the Narada Bhakti Sutras, just like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, they're only quite short, 4 chapters. So here you have 5 chapters. So sutra means something which is a very, very condensed form, a lot of knowledge, a lot of knowledge and a lot of words and a lot of explanations condensed into a small thing. That's why it's called sutra. The English word sutra. Sutra means a thread, right? In the hospital, if you get an act, you have to have sutured. They're called, when they do stitches, yeah? It's called sutra. So that's coming from sutra in Sanskrit. That means a thread which is joining together many ideas on a single thread. And it's very, very concise, just in a few words. Yeah. So, for example, like Vedanta Sutra of Vyasadeva is a concise form of Vedic knowledge, put in very concise form. And then the commentary on that, the sort of fully expanded commentary or explanation of that is Srimad Bhagavatam. So here the Narada Bhakti Sutras, so just like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras about the yoga practice, how to attain Paramatma, realization through yoga. So the Bhakti Sutras of Narada are how to attain service, Nitya Seva of the Lord. And Narada Muni, he's a great rishi. He's called Deva Rishi. He's the rishi among the gods because he's simultaneously a god and a rishi. Means he can go travel everywhere, even up to Vaikuntha. He can actually enter Vaikuntha and have association of the Lord Narayan, and sometimes Krishna also. But he's also travelling around the different lokas, planetary systems, all of them, and delivering the souls. And anyway, so, and in Chaitanya Leela, he's Srivas Thakur, supposed to be incarnation of Narad. Like in Panchatattva, Chaitanya, Nityananda, Sridvaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, Adi, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Srivas Thakur represents the pure devotee, the jiva soul, fully dedicated. Vibhanangsa means individual spark of spirit. The other four in Panchatattva, your Gauranga is the absolute truth, right? Complete. Nityananda is expansion, Balaram. Nityananda, Balaram, Hoilo Nitai. Advaita is incarnation. Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu, Avatar, and Sadashiva. Sridvaita, Gadadhar is internal energy, Radharani's energy. And then Gadadhar Srivas is the pure devotee, is Narada. So without further ado, what I'll do is I'll just read the sutras, not the commentary. This was actually, this particular edition was done by Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada in 1967, but he only managed to give the translation and commentary for the first 13 verses. And the rest of it was completed by his disciple Svarup Maharaj with the help of various Sanskritists. And the reason for that was he started to do it, he wanted to finish it, but at that point he considered it was most important that he finished the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam commentary. So, Atato Bhakting Vyakashyama, that's the first sutra. Like Atato Brahma Jigyasa is Vedanta Sutra, the first one. And here, Atato Bhakting Vyakashyamaha. Whereas Atato Brahma Jigyasa is saying now, in the human form of life, is the time to search for spirit. Brahma Jigyasa. Or Jigyasa means to know spirit. But here, Atato Bhaktim Vyakashyama. Now, therefore, I will try to explain the process of devotional service. This is Narada Muni. Satvasmin Parama Prema Rupa. Devotional service manifests as the most elevated, pure love for God. I'll say each one twice so you get it. Satvasmin Parama Prema Rupa. Devotional service manifests as the most elevated, pure love for God. Sutra 3, Amrit Svarupa Cha. So very, very simple. Amrit Svarupa Cha. This pure love for God is eternal. Sutra 4, Yalabdva Pumang Siddho Bhavat Amrito Bhavati Tripto Bhavati. Upon achieving that stage of transcendental devotional service in pure love of God, a person becomes perfect, immortal, and peaceful. So I mentioned there's 5 chapters. So this first chapter is called The Value of Devotion. So, and then the next chapters are about how to practice devotion. That's similar to in the Yoga Sutras. First chapter is about the effects or the goal or the results of the practicing of yoga, and then the chapters after that about how to practice. Right? So it's following a similar format here. Okay. Sutra 5. Yat pyapya na kenchid vanchati na shochati na dveshti na ramate notsahi bhavati. A person engaged in such pure devotional service neither desires anything for sense gratification, nor laments for any loss, nor hates anything, nor enjoys anything on his personal account, nor becomes very enthusiastic in material activity. Wow. A person engaged in such pure devotional service neither desires anything for sense gratification, nor laments for any loss, nor hates anything, nor enjoys anything on his personal account, nor becomes very enthusiastic in material activity. Sutra 6. Yad gyatva matto bhavati, stabdo bhavat atmaramo bhavati. Yad gyatva matto bhavati, stabdo bhavat atmaramo bhavati. One who understands perfectly the process of devotional service in love of Godhead becomes intoxicated in its discharge. Sometimes he becomes stunned in ecstasy and thus enjoys his whole self, being engaged in the service of the Supreme Self. In other words, to say, if a person is engaged in the service of the Supreme Self, through that they will experience their whole self, right? Whereas a person engaged in sense gratification, they're only experiencing like a bit of themselves. So it's not a very good deal. Sutra 7. Shana kamayamana nirodha rupatvat. Sana kamayamana nirodha rupatvat. There's translation. There is no question of lust in the execution of pure devotional service, because in it all material activities are renounced. It's interesting. The word here is nirod. It's using saying renounce or renunciation. And in the Yoga Sutra, the very first sutra is explaining what is the meaning or what is the goal of yoga. It says, Patanjali says, chitta vritti nirod. Again, the same word. Here they translate it as renounced or renunciation. But it means it's more like to stop something dead. I come to a dead stop. Like chitta vritti means the fluctuations of the mental movements of the mind. Swing, Chitta vritti nirod, to stop that and be in one pointed. Yeah. Actually, it was interesting. I did read one commentary, a Vaishnav commentary, supposedly, on the Yoga Sutras. And he was explaining there about the mind, because he talked like in Bhagavad Gita, the mind is one-pointed, like the flame of a candle in a windless place. But it's not like then there's nothing going on in the mind, but it's more like the same thing is going on continually. Because the mind can't stop. Do you follow? So if you're like, for example, if what's the thought in the mind is one image of a candle flame after another repeated, it just looks like one flame. Yeah. So it's not that it stops, because the mind is the product of sattva gun, right? Yeah. So the mind is sattva gun. So the natural state of the mind is to be equipoised, not swinging one way or the other. That's the natural state. The intelligence is produced by rajagun, so that's in a constant state of creative expression, like Lord Brahma, right? He's the incarnation, I suppose, of rajagun, because he creates the universe. Yeah. And tamaguna is, again, nothing. So it appears that in sattva and tamas is similar, no activity. But one is, you can say, put it like this, you can say one is nothing, is tamagun. And sattva gun, one is everything. But in one sense, everything and nothing are looking something similar. But it's not, actually. And in the middle is the rajas. There is activity. There's this activity striving for some result. Yeah. So, it's interesting, Lord Brahma, he's, some of the stories about Lord Brahma, he's always feeling very harassed, and very anxious because of his job of maintaining the create, like he did, like administrator of the universe. To imagine administrating this temple is already quite hard for Saraswati and others. So many things, And imagine the whole universe. all the different planetary systems and all the generations of different beings, so many levels of beings, 400,000 human species, human-like species, charanas, vidyadharas, siddhas, the human beings, aliens, greys, all of them. Yeah, so it's quite a headache for him actually. So we get headache, his 4 heads. Sutra 8, Nirodhas tu lokaved vyapara nyasha. Nirodhas tu lokaved vyapara nyasha. Such renunciation in devotional service means to give up all kinds of social customs and religious rituals governed by Vedic injunction. Okay, this is talking about pure devotional service. So it doesn't mean that we just immediately stop all social customs and religious rituals. But actually, a person engaged in pure devotional service is not governed by that. They may do those things externally to sort of, there's an example of good behavior in society, ethical behavior and so forth. But all of these things, Vedic injunctions, are to bring the person to the point or level of devotional service. See. Sutra 9. Tasmin ananyatha tad virodhi sudashinatacha. Tasmin ananyata tad virodhi sudasinatacha. Renunciation also means being exclusively dedicated to the Lord and indifferent to what stands in the way of his service. Sutra 10. Anyashrayanam tyago nanyata. Anyashrayanam tyago nanyata. Exclusive dedication to the Lord means giving up all shelters other than him. Yeah, I think this verse, or at least this concept, is in Prapani Jivanamritam, where Srila Maharaj explains, he says in his introductory verse that surrender to the Lord happens in 2 ways. One is, of course, giving up all shelter other than the Lord. Sorry. And also increase in surrendering to deeper and deeper levels in the service of the Lord. So both ways. And Sutra 11, Loka Vedeshu tad anukula charanam tad virodhi sudashinata. Same word there. Virodhi sudashinata. Indifference towards what stands in the way of devotional service means to accept only those activities of social custom and Vedic injunction that are favourable to devotional service. So the main point then is the service, devotional service. So it's not that just because we are engaged in the attempt to practice devotional service, and this, our particular line, is coming from the Vedic line, right? Vedic line of India, as opposed to, for example, the Semitic line, the Abrahamic line, or others. That doesn't mean anything that's supposedly Vedic is like, oh, that's great, we should follow that because it's Vedic or it's from India. Not necessarily at all. That can take us away from devotional service. If it's not connected with devotional service, or it's not favourable to devotional service. Anukulya means favourable to devotional service. If it's favourable, yes, we can accept it. And if it's not, just because it's got the stamp of, Vedic or Hindu thing on it, we don't have to accept it. Sutra 12. Bhavatu nishchoy dadhyat udvam shastra rakshanam. Bhavatu nishchoy dadhyat udvam shastra rakshanam. One must continue to follow scriptural injunctions even after one is fixed up in determined certainty that devotional service is the only means for reaching the perfection of life. So it doesn't mean, oh, now I've been practicing so-called devotional service like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So now I can just don't have to follow any rules and regulations anymore. You know that's in Upadeshamrita. To follow the rules and regulations fanatically, obsessively or fanatically, to be seen to be following them by others, or without understanding what is their purpose, or to think that by doing that one can attain the goal, love of Krishna, just by that, that shouldn't be done. At the same time, to think they're not important, or they don't need to be followed at all, that's also wrong. So it's about balance, proper integrated understanding of it. Yeah. And then he says in Sutra 13, Anyatha patitya shankaya. Anyatha patitya shankaya. You know what that means? Patitya? Any guess? Huh?
Fallen?
Yeah. Patitya pavan. So patitya, he says, otherwise there's every possibility of falling down. Meaning, if you, in the name of pure devotional service, that not, even if a person has attained nishta bhakti, okay, but they have to continue to follow the scriptural injunctions. Otherwise, there's every possibility of falling down. So that's we've experienced that. So, Sutra 14, Loke pi tavad ebi bhojanadi vyaparas tha sharira dharanavadi. Loke pi tavad eva bhojanadi vyaparas tva sharira dharanavadi. For as long as the body lasts, one should engage minimally in social and political activities and in such matters as eating. Let's see. Okay, that was the first chapter, which is called the value of devotion.
Actually, eating in the form of a food, or
Yeah.
as a consumption?
No, eating. Manja. Supposed to be controlled in eating, isn't it? I know it's hard, especially if you like chocolate. And I'll just do a little bit more, okay? The second chapter, defining bhakti. Sutra 15, Talakshanani vachante nana matta vedhat. Talakshanani vachante nana matta vedhat. Now the characteristics of devotional service will be described according to various authoritative opinions. So you see, it's not like it's just like one thing. Even among the sages, even among the bona fide Vedic sages, authorities of devotion, there are 12 Mahajanas, right? Authorities on devotional service. Of course, there's many more, but generally it's given in the Srimad Bhagavatam that these 12 have given a particular contribution and a clarity of explanation about devotional service. So Narada is one. Narada. Then you have Shukadev Goswami, Prahlad Maharaj, Yamaraj, 4 Kumaras, who is it, Janaka, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, others? Kapila Muni. I don't think so. Is Lakshmi? I don't know, but there's 12 Mahajanas. So, and the way they explain it might be a little bit different. So there's this variety, you see. So this Sutra 16 says, Pujadishu Anurag iti Parasharya. Quoting one authority here, Parashara Muni, the father of Vyasadeva. By the way, Vyasadeva, I mentioned before, it isn't a person, like one person. It's a title, Vyasa, or Veda Vyasa. It's like saying, Master of the Scriptures, Veda Vyasa. So there's different Vyasas in every kalpa. So the one of this particular age, who, made the Srimad Bhagavatam and compiled the Vedas, he's called Krishna Dvaipayan, Veda Vyasa. So Srila Vyasadeva, the son of Parashara Muni, says that bhakti is fond attachment for worshipping the Lord in various ways. Kathadishu iti garga. Kathadishu iti garga. Garga Muni says that bhakti is fondness for narrations about the Lord, by the Lord, and so on. That's another aspect. So one is like service of the Lord, that's like dasyam, and this one is fondness for hearing the narrations of the Lord, Shravan. Garga Muni. You know Garga Muni? Yeah. Anyone know about Garga Muni? Anything?
Is it who wrote Garga Samhita?
Yeah. That's his famous book, Garga Samhita. Srila Govinda Maharaj, he liked that book a lot, and he wanted to, he did ask Sagamars to translate it. I don't think that ever happened into English, and Garga Muni was apparently the family priest of Nanda Maharaj. So he did the astrological chart of Krishna when Krishna appeared, Garga Rishi. So they know many things. Not just, how to chant Hare Krishna. They also know astrology, many Vedic sciences. Rishi means, Srila Govinda Maharaj said, Rishi means like a university professor. That's like the top one, a Rishi. And then you have Muni. Muni is, literally Muni is coming from manas, mind. Muni, a thoughtful person. Muni.
Those who don't speak so much as well, mumblers, mumbling.
They're Munis, huh?
Like those who don't speak so much.
They take Mona Brata, vow of silence. Is it? Okay. And then you have other, sadhu is general, right? Sadhu is general person. Sadhu coming from sat, eternal. So sadhu means, a practitioner who is interested in the eternal things. That's sadhu in general. So there's two things now. We've got Vyasadeva saying devotional service or bhakti is a liking for serving the Lord in various ways. Garga Muni says it's hearing about the Lord's pastimes and the words of the Lord, like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Sutra 18, Atma Rach Avirodheneti Shandilya is another great sage, Shandilya. Atma Rach Avirodheneti Shandilya. Shandilya says that bhakti results from one's removing all obstructions to taking pleasure in the Supreme Self. So there's another aspect. Shandilya is saying that it's a kind of devotional bhakti or devotional service is a kind of ongoing purification, continuous purification of oneself to remove all the obstructions to one's consciousness of Krishna. All are true. Sutra 19. But what does Narada himself say? Naradas tu tad arpita kila charata tad vishmarane parama vakulyateti. Naradas tu tad arpita kila charata tad vishmarane parama vyakulateti. Narada, however, says that bhakti consists of offering one's every act to the Supreme Lord and feeling extreme distress in forgetting him. But it's not. He's not saying. Narada isn't saying, yeah, those are good, but this is the real thing. This is my version, and this is the best. He's not saying that, because in the next sutra 20 he says, Astevam evam, which means all of these, yes. All of these, yes, yes. Bhakti is in fact correctly described in each of these ways. And then 21, Jata Braja Gopi Kanam. Jata Braja Gopi Kanam. The cowherd women of Braj are an example of pure bhakti. Tatrapi na mahatmya jnana vishmat apavada. Tatrapi na mahatmya jnana vishmat apavada. Apavada. Say it again. Tatrapi na mahatmya jnana vishmat apavada. So even in the case of the gopis, one cannot criticize them for forgetting the Lord's greatness. So in their case, because their devotion was so pure of loving Krishna, that their fact that they weren't aware of the Aishvarya, the opulence of the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But then he says in the next sutra, 23, that's not the case for lower devotees. He says, Tadvihinam jaranam iva. Tadvihinam charanam iva. Tadvihinam charanam iva. On the other hand, displays of devotion without knowledge of God's greatness are no better than the affairs of illicit lovers. Yeah, so it's, as we hear from Srila Govinda Maharaj, it's supposed to be devotion, not emotion, right? Not material emotion, expressing that as, in the name of devotion. Like, because things can be imitated. Like, even in the movies, these expert actors are so good, and they can cry, just, it looks so real, you couldn't tell it's not real, it's so good. So they can display symptoms of devotion just through emotion, like inducing an emotion materially, like this. So it's talking about that. Because God, there's two aspects, as you know, the greatness of God, the Aishvarya, the awesomeness, the might, the opulence, the grandeur, the infinity, and all of that. And then there's the sweetness, the rasam, the sweetness of Krishna, So in the Bible it says, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So it's similar to this. Without knowledge of God's greatness, simply displaying devotion for an unadvanced person is very bad. Well, he says, no better than the affairs of illicit lovers. Right. So
does this go through the evolution, where first one perceives the greatness of overcome that?
Yeah. When it says fear of the Lord, it doesn't mean being scared of, being afraid of. It means an awareness of the awesomeness of God, of the Lord.
Acknowledgement of His power.
Yeah. Beginning of wisdom. Yeah. Naturally. Yeah. Why is that? Then he answers his own question here. Why is it that this displaying of devotion without understanding of the real nature of the Lord as being God, being the infinite supreme being, why is it bad? Why is it false? And he says in the next Sutra 24, Nastyeva tasmims tatshuka shukitvam. Nastyeva tasmims tatshuka shukitvam. In such false devotion, one does not find pleasure exclusively in the Lord's pleasure. So that's the thing. In pure devotional service, it's that the fact that the Lord is getting pleasure and satisfaction, then the devotee is relishing that. That's his joy, that's his satisfaction. Not directly of his own senses, See? So, and in the false devotion, one is just gratifying one's senses in the name of devotional service. Yeah, so that's why, and then, of course, it's a high example, but it's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's a quotation from somewhere, probably, Ujjwala Nilamani, but it's a quotation. Radharani is saying that Krishna's satisfaction is everything for me, and if he has pleasure by seeing me in distress, then that distress is the greatest of my happiness. Something like that. So this is very exalted, isn't it? I say, then Satu Karma Jnana Yogebhyo Pyadi Katara. Satu Karma Jnana Yogebhyo Adi Katara. Pure devotional service, on the other hand, is far superior to fruitive work, philosophical speculation, and mystic meditation. Yeah, like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said to Arjuna, end of the 6th chapter, the yogi is greater than the fruitive worker, the karmi, the philosophical speculation, the jnani. So yogi mam api sarvesham madkitanantratma. So of all, therefore Arjuna, be a yogi. But then he says, of all yogis, the best is my devotee. Because his yoga is to always think of me, bow down, worship me, do everything for my satisfaction. That yoga is linking with the Lord through that constant. But Krishna is very merciful, and so we say, "Oh, this is very high. How could we possibly attain such a level where?" Like we hear Mother Yashoda, she says she's prepared to give up crores of lifetimes, crores of lives or crores of bodies, just to remove a drop of sweat from Krishna's forehead. Like, what's that, You can hardly think what type of attachment to Krishna that is. And so I've totally forgotten what I was going to say there. What was I saying before that? Yogi Mama Pisavisham, yeah. Yeah, before that though. Saying about the best of all yogis, who is always connected. Oh yes. But Krishna is very merciful, so he says in the 12th chapter, which is called Devotional Service, Bhakti Yoga, it's incidentally the shortest chapter in the Gita, 20 verses, if you want to read it. And there he says to Arjuna, that verse, Manmana bhav mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru mame vaishati sattang te pratijani priyosime. Become my devotee, manmana bhav. Srila Prabhupada translates, always think of me, manmana bhav. Make that movement of your mind, your manas, your mind, to always be directed to me. But in Sridhar Maharaj's translation it says, give me your heart. Because bhava is more like feeling, emotion of the heart. Manmana bhav, mad bhakto, become my devotee. Madhyaji means do everything for me. You heard of the Jajur Veda? 4 Vedas. Rig, Sama, Atharva and Jajur. So the Jajur Veda is from this word yagya, which means to offer sacrifice. So Madhyaji, do everything for me. Mam namaskaru, always offer me obeisances. Mama vaishati satyang te pratijane priyosime. In this way you will come to me. But then he says in the next verse, if you can't do that, then try to follow the rules of Bhakti Yoga, the regulations of hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. Then he says, if you can't do that, then just try to work for me and offer the result to me of your work. That could be like someone, right, working in a factory outside. They have some attachment to the temple or to devotees, but they're not ready to undertake the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga or be initiated or anything, but they want to do some service. So they give the fruit of some of the fruit of their work to Krishna, like donating to the temple or spending some of their time for doing work around the temple or different things, right? So that, and then he said, and if you can't do that also, then just try to work without attachment for the result. Work without attachment. So there's stages, different stages. It's always possible. Giving the connection. So I'll have to stop there.
Each stage is like more purification happens. And
Yeah.
It kind of pushes it to the next level.
Yes.
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 Yoga, and then clarity appears.
Yeah. So like that, yeah, of course. So, for example, you got even in karma yoga, you have nishkam karma yoga and shakam karma yoga. So, for example, like Hindus, they say, I give donation to the temple for some particular thing. And when I can see the result of that thing, yes, I can see definitely that homeless people are being fed. So yeah, I give donation for buying boga. But they want to see the result, otherwise they won't. But then later on they say, I just give, and whatever they use it, it's okay, They're going to use it for Krishna, so they have no attachment. That's the development, And then in stages, yeah.
Is it karma yoga? It kind of moved towards jnana.
Yes.
And you start to be more observant.
Yeah. The fruit of karma is jnana, is knowledge, self-knowledge. Because when you work without attachment, gradually by working in that way, through that purification, you can realize you're not the body, you're the soul. Atma Gyan. Then you come to Jnana Yoga. You see? And then in Jnana Yoga, then from that stage of realizing you're not the body, then you can really come to devotional service. Isn't it? Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakamshati. From Brahma Bhuta stage, and you can engage in devotional service. But even then, it will not be immediately Ananya Bhakti, or Jnana Shunya Bhakti. First it will be Karma Mishra Bhakti. So you'll be engaging in devotional service, but still some desire for the fruit is there, You like to do this type of service because it makes you feel good. But the other service, not very keen, It's Karma Mishra. And then Jnana Mishra, a little higher. So any service is fine, you do it, but at the same time, your idea is that through this I'll be purified and I'll become elevated and more developed in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So that sounds like, that's very good. It is good, but it's not unalloyed devotional service. Because that means giving up any consciousness about yourself, complete forgetfulness of self. What's that verse in the Ramananda Samvad, about Jnana Shunya Bhakti, Jnana Shunya Bhakti, devoid of even knowledge, even desire. So just simply following the guidance or trying to fulfill the desire of Guru, Vaishnava and Krishna, as if blindly, without any idea of what's in it for me, just that takes real shraddha, real faith, Yeah.
But in the beginning, it would be blind faith, right? But then at that stage, it's like almost like eternal faith.
Yeah, it becomes blind again. So in the beginning is blind faith, and it goes through the stages, and it becomes blind again, in a higher way, another way. Do you follow? Mm-hmm. Because, then at that point one is already connected, on the inside is connected. Their relationship is already there then, solidly, with the Lord, Hari Guru Vaishnava. So then one is going on with that, Yeah. It's all a mystery, really. But anyway, Hare Krishna. Jai. It's. Are you going to chant now? Will you chant? Hari Harai Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Namaya Manama Keshamaya Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudana Gopina Madana Mohana Sitarandan Nityanan Shri Advaita Chanda Gadadhara Shiva Shadi Bhakti Vrinda Jaya Rupa Sanatana Bhakta Raguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Raguna Ichai Kochai Gauri Chandana Banana Jai Goshai Tabe Muni Tanadaja Tanjavara Panari Tandara Charana Shevi Vakashani Vasa Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Bol.